Hi, this is Jack from the Spitfire Audio Customer Experience team. In this video, I'm going to be demonstrating the user interface controls for the Eric Whitacre Choir library. You'll note now that I've loaded the plugin that it doesn't come with a preset. This is actually a personal preference of mine which I've toggled in the settings. You can see how to do this at the end of the video. Now, Eric Whitacre has quite an extensive preset list, so using these filters on the left-hand side is really going to help you find that patch you want that little bit quicker. There are three little options available to you next to the preset name. The first is this star button. Now, the star button gives you the option to basically choose favorite patches from this drop-down menu. And if you filter via the starred filter at the top on the left-hand side, you can find your favorite patches far more easily. The next option is this play button, which will provide you with the ability to preview the sound. And finally, we have the little eye icon, which will provide you with a little bit of information about what this preset is all about. So when we load a patch, next to the preset name, we have the option of a left and right arrow, and these allow you to cycle through or backwards through the preset list. The save option enables you to make some modifications to the plugin and then also save it as your own preset. Once you've saved it as your own preset, it will be stored under the users filter on the left hand side. There are three controls on the user interface. The first is expression. Now, expression is a volume control which operates within the master volume of the library, and it works hand in hand with the next fader, which is dynamics. The dynamics fader, which is mapped to CC number 1 or your mod wheel if you're using a keyboard, allows you to crossfade the velocity layers of the library. The knob control allows a variety of different functions. However, by default, it's set to reverb. By clicking this control, we can then see the options available to us. The three options that are available to us from this drop-down menu are release, tightness, and also vibrato. Now, because I've got a long articulations patch loaded up, the tightness option isn't available to us. Instead, we only have an option for release and vibrato. Release allows you to extend or shorten the ends of the notes by either turning this to the left to shorten, or also turning to the right to extend the ends of the notes. The tightness option is only available on the short articulations, and what this does is by turning the dial to the left, you have the option to eat into the sound, so we're sharpening up the transients. By turning it to the right, we're actually loosening the transients, giving a somewhat more loose sound. The vibrato option gives the user the ability to crossfade the different vibrato layers for that patch. Below these three controls, we have the technique switcher. Here we can decide which technique we want the library to be playing. We can either do this by clicking, or we can also implement some of the automated key switching options. Also, by holding down Shift, we can select multiple articulations at once. To the right of the techniques, we have this little keyboard shimmier in the top right-hand corner. This allows you to drag the generic key switches onto the keyboard at the bottom. The little padlock option enables the user to lock the techniques in place. So if you have any type of key switching setup, these won't be available to you. From this trigger drop-down menu, we have the options to set which type of articulation switching this particular technique will be set to. So for example, if I decide to choose a MIDI channel from this available list, this particular technique which I have selected will change depending on the MIDI channel that I set below. We have a range of options for this, where we have CC range, velocity range, the MIDI channel, as discussed, the speed of which you play, and also a program change. Note that when you are setting these up, you need to make sure that every technique is assigned to the right type of articulation switching. So I would need to assign each technique to the MIDI channel option in order to change these techniques via MIDI channel. I would also need to increment the channel which these techniques respond to. The Activate button enables the user to latch the articulation switching. Below the key switching options, we also have the round robin options. From this round robins drop-down menu, we can choose how many round robins this particular technique will have access to. The number of round robins for a technique will vary depending on which that technique is. The reset on transport function, when checked, allows the user to reset the round robin cycle every time you hit play in your DAW. Likewise, when you reset the round robins from a particular key range, you will also reset the cycle depending on which key switch you choose. So if I was to put two key switches on the keyboard, the first green key will represent round robin number 1 and the second number 2. If you prefer the sound of a particular round robin, you can choose to reset that by clicking the corresponding key to that round robin. From the options menu, we can create false round robins by doing things like borrowing the round robins from a neighbouring zone. Below this, we also have a transpose function. Now, above the technique switcher, we have the view selector, where we can choose either the signal mixer or the effects page. The signal mixer is where we can choose which type of microphones we want to hear and where we can blend them. We can also toggle them on and off by using these toggles at the bottom or simply dragging the microphone all the way to the bottom. When you toggle a microphone off, that sample content will be unloaded from the RAM. Using the left and right arrows below the microphones allows you to see a wider variety of microphones which you have available for that particular patch. On the left of the signal mixer, we have the option for an easy blend of microphones. So by dragging this to the far side, you will create a blend of microphones between the ambience and the tree mics. When you blend this forward, you create a blend between the close mics and the tree mics. The global option allows you to transfer this microphone blend when you're articulation switching. So to the left of the advanced controls, we have these two little arrows. This is where we can save a particular blend of microphone as a preset, meaning we can transfer our blend between different Eric Whitacre plugins. On the right-hand side of the signal mixer, we have the stereo width and the pan controls. Now, the stereo width will only affect the close mics and the spot microphones. Below we have the panning, and we also have an invert left and right signal option. To the top right corner of this section, we have the padlock, which is where we can lock the signal mixer in place. Moving on to the effects page, we can see everything that is assigned to the knob control, but at once. At the very top of the plugin, we have the top menu. Now, here we can see the status of how the plugin is processing things. So for example, this LED on the left-hand side tells us whether we're still loading sample content into the RAM. Once this particular LED is solid green, we're no longer loading the patch and it's ready to play. The CPU meter tells us how much processing power this particular plugin will be taking up, and then we also have the disk option, which tells us how our disk is coping. Then we have the memory option, which is where we can see how much the plugin is currently loading into your RAM. The voices option shows us how many voices we're currently triggering when playing the keys, and then we also have the refresh button. Moving further down the list, we have the MIDI channel, which is where we can increment or decrement which MIDI channel we wish the plugin to respond to. Now, if you're changing techniques via MIDI channel, you set this to any. We then have a global tune, pan, and master volume control. To the right of the master volume, we have two settings options and also a collapse and expand the plugin view. The first option is the plugin settings, where we can choose which type of behavior we wish the dynamics fader to respond to, or whether we wish to change the velocity curve of the library. This is really useful for if you believe the library isn't responding to the touch of your keyboard correctly. The CC mappings can either be reset or cleared, and we can also choose whether the short releases are timed or untimed. If you'd like to create your own CC mappings, right-clicking any parameter, you can either learn the MIDI CC automation or remove that data. The global settings can be chosen from the cogwheel, and here we have a further array of different ways we can configure this plugin. Under the General tab, we have the copy settings to other Spitfire products option, but under the interface is where we can really customize things. The first option from the interface list is the Show and Display Help Text option. The help text can be displayed in the bottom left-hand corner of the plugin, and when you hover over any particular parameter, it will tell you a little bit about that particular parameter. The default size allows you to either load the plugin in its collapsed state, which would look like this, or you can load it in the expanded view, which is how the plugin has looked throughout this video. The default scale option allows you to set the size of the plugin as a default. We can also choose whether we want to drag the right-hand corner to adjust the size of the plugin to our personal taste. The Show Key Switches option allows us to put the key switches onto the keyboard and be color-coded. The Automatic Unload with Mixer Fader is how we decide whether the microphone is unloaded from RAM when we drag it all the way to the bottom. If this isn't selected and we drag that microphone all the way to the bottom, we don't unload the sample content from the RAM, and what we do instead is simply turn it down. The Gain Units option is where we can choose whether the gain values of the plugin are displayed in dB or a percentage. At the bottom of the list, we have the Make Controllers Global option, which is where the common controllers for the plugin will transfer when we are articulation switching. Under the audio options, we have 3 different options. The maximum voices is where we can limit how many voices can be triggered when playing the library. We also have the preload size, where we can choose to load more sample content into the RAM, and below this we also have the stream buffer size. Now, if you notice the disk struggling, I recommend increasing the preload size and also the stream buffer size. And finally, under these settings, we have the plugin option, which is where we can choose a default preset that we want the library to load with when we start it up. If you have any further questions about the Eric Whitacre plugin, please do get in touch with us at spitfireaudio.com/support. Thanks.